Hey, Stowe Spartans. My name is Charlotte McNeely, and I am your sophomore class vice president. And today, I am lucky enough to be here with the superintendent of public instruction in Washington, Chris Reykdal. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here on behalf of Stanwood High School. We really just are very honored to be able to talk to you for this amount of time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Can I ask you some questions, please?
Sounds great.
How are you doing today?
Consumed by a very complicated schedule, but other than that, pretty good.
Great. What exactly is your job title, which we just kind of covered in the beginning, and what do you do?
Yeah, the superintendent of public instruction is a statewide elected office that oversees our state's public K-12 system. It is the only statewide office that runs nonpartisan. So everyone else runs with a party label. It doesn't mean we don't have personal opinions, of course, but it's a nonpartisan campaign that you run there. And it is all things money to the school districts from the legislature. It's all things accountability, so the data comes back to us. And we have learning standards. So we determine what sort of the options are with respect to the critical learning standards in each subject area. Those are just three of the really, really big pieces for our organization.
Wow, those are quite broad items that seem to have like effect on quite a few people. How exactly do you handle making such like huge decisions like that? Because it must be kind of stressful to be like, oh, this is going to affect all the students in Washington State. Like, how exactly do you do that?
You know, I'd say it's really with partnerships. There's some authorities that this office has as a constitutional office that are pretty exclusive, but mostly my work is sort of shaped by what the legislature adopts in law, what the governor's willing to sign. And then we have an entire body of law in this state that only has our office with sort of big policy levers, right? We want more career and tech ed maybe, or we're pushing for different approach to reading, but it's really each school district then who has to make the implementation decisions. Each school district has incredible authority with their locally elected school boards on how they will do it. What textbooks, who are they hiring? What's their schedule in their school? Where are they gonna put their students in terms of elementary, middle, high configurations? The local districts have way more decision-making than people realize in our state.
Wow, that's really cool. So it's kind of like a umbrella effect to say. And so that you guys are kind of like the top of the umbrella, and then each kind of has like a, I don't know, a raindrop off of it, which are the local superintendent areas, and they kind of controlled what's down in theirs. So, but it's kind of an oversee thing, is what I'm.
That's right. And just remember, you know, every legislator setting policy and they're elected. The governor is signing, he's elected. My role is elected, and then those local policies are by 5-member school boards, including 5 in your district who are elected. So at every step of the way, the voters have a sort of a, hey, if there's something in that chain that we think isn't effective, there's ways for them to impact that.
That's really cool. I definitely didn't exactly know how that worked, and I know now, so that's really awesome. What does an average workday look like for you?
Well, it's always very communication focused. So a lot of our job is communicating, whether it's to superintendents or educators or families, community organizations, the legislature. We're regularly trying to update them on kind of the direction of the system, how we're implementing their laws, and then, you know, we're collecting a lot of data from the system in terms of student performance. So we're communicating a lot of that back to policymakers. During COVID, most of that is via Zoom and remote. And I would actually say it's gotten more intense. And I think we should all look in the mirror and ask ourselves why. Just because you can schedule a Zoom meeting with 10 extra people because it's so easy, should you? Would you have done that? And would you have had all that same process in a time when everyone else was maybe a little more occupied? I am missing that interpersonal human connection. And I think we've kind of overdone how much we're doing right now because the tool's so easy. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't be great communicators, but sometimes I think the ease of it probably is making it ubiquitous and maybe not the most productive use of time always.
Oh, I guess I've never really thought of it from that perspective, and that's so true, just to see how easy it is to, like, have a Zoom call or something, and then you may invite everyone, but then is that really the best use of everyone's time for productivity and stuff like that? What has been your greatest professional achievement?
Wow, there's a lot. First of all, I would say none of them pale in comparison to personal, which is my kids and my spouse. I love my family, but professionally, I've had a lot of fortune to be in roles as a classroom teacher and a school board member. I served for 6 years in the legislature, this role. So I've had the ability to shape education policy in a lot of ways. I think, one of the more recent ones that really is a highlight for me is how much dual language, bilingual education we brought to our school districts. We have nearly 50 districts now with elementary school programs. Kids come in and they have the option to learn a second language immediately, not waiting for 2 years in high school so they can get into a college or university, but really learning language and doing it for a long period of time. And I'm very, very proud of us being kind of the leadership push for a lot of that work.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't know about that. That's really awesome. I know me starting out as high school learning Spanish is it's pretty hard. So I feel like if started a little bit earlier, it would definitely be really helpful and you could totally kind of master the language in a sense.
That's
That's
what the science says. Start earlier. It doesn't deplete at all our ability to learn our primary language. In fact, it makes our English language learning go faster and more effective with a second language. We do it totally upside down in this country, so I hope to change that.
wow, that's really awesome. Congratulations on getting that in here. It's really cool. So I know you touched on it like a second ago, but what kind of job experience have you had or education that you've done that's gotten you to your current position?
So many. I grew up the youngest of eight in a really struggling family, actually in Snohomish, so I'm really familiar with your region quite a bit there to the northwest of us, where I grew up. But I did all kinds of little jobs. I baked groceries and worked in construction and just did a lot of stuff, which all added a ton of value in terms of understanding customers and understanding processes and just really recognizing that there's honor in all work. But I was the first in my family to go straight to a university after high school. I've had brothers and sisters do it but I went straight to it. So I also got a pretty traditional academic university route. I've touched both of those worlds. Um, and so, yeah, a teaching certificate and a background in social studies, specifically history, economics, politics, and then a graduate degree in public administration from the University of North Carolina. So I'm a Tar Heel by grad school. That's where I really got to focus skills on how do you manage the public sector tax dollars effectively? How do you create good performance and be accountable to it? So really grateful for my education and the skills. And I tell you, it did not start as formal ed. It started as a lot of informal learning on jobs.
Wow, that's quite like inspiring how you're like you started out maybe somewhere where you maybe have not have expected to become like what you are now, but all of those like different job opportunities and that different education you got to where you are now, and that's really cool because there's not like a direct path, and I feel like that's always really important for people to remember that life doesn't always go straight, so you have to make sure that you take all the opportunities you get and just keep going along with it because again, everything is definitely an experience thing, and maybe you wouldn't have had the skills that you have now if you wouldn't have done those maybe like different jobs that you weren't expecting. So we made sure to reach out to all the students at SHS and the community because we were very excited for this interview today. And we decided on 5 questions that were asked. So these are all student questions. And uh, so the first one is, why did you decide to take on this line of work?
Because public education's really where I finally realized I could do anything, right? It wasn't a linear path, like you said, but I really wanted to give back to public ed. And I didn't know if I'd be in the classroom the rest of my life, which I did to start my career and really loved it. But then I saw systems that didn't work for a lot of students and families and communities. So it was really my own personal experience that I said, man, I really want to bring great public ed to every student and have them have a sense of belonging and multiple pathways to their success. So that's what got me into it. And I've always somehow had jobs that have connected to public education.
Oh, that's really cool that you just took that and then you went forward. You saw potential for positive change that you could make and you went for it. It's really good. Do you have a range of time when you think we would be in a non-optional hybrid option for in-person learning?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understood that question because I
Okay.
got to read that a little bit first. Tell me a little more about that.
Okay. So currently at our high school, because like you said, it's kind of through superintendent, uh, through our superintendent. So we were saying how right now we are at optional 2 days a week for half the last name and the other half of the last name. So that's currently optional if you will go back to those in-person 2 hours or not, or optional. I don't know for sure if that would be on you or not, whether or not it would be optional, but I think that's what that person was asking, if there would be a time where you think we would all be going back to school, like for sure, kind of.
I think we're in really good shape for this next fall. That's what I can certainly tell you is on the horizon. This question of hybrid is now becoming very much a function of physical distancing requirements by public health officials. I think the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, is looking at this right now and will probably give us some indication that the research will support less than 6 feet if we have vaccinations that are, again, pretty broad-based. So we're kind of waiting on that. I do think that guidance will be about next fall. I don't anticipate a lot of change this spring. I know some people really want that, but there's just a lot of folks who are not vaccinated yet. And despite the lower health impacts on young people, you would still be, adding more people in denser areas and then potentially bringing virus back home to parents and grandparents. And so I know there's real public health concerns. So I'd say we're probably in the models we're in for most of the spring, and definitely some bigger opportunities next fall.
Thank you. Would you consider adding more skill-based classes to the high school curriculum? For example, like classes that will help you buy a car or insurance, or like just how to do your taxes?
This is an awesome question. So I'm going to spend a little time on it. Yes, yes, and yes. So when I came into this office, again, thinking about my background, my experience, and what I observe in the research, how many students want more meaningful coursework that leads to their next step? For 40% of them, that next step is not a college or a university. It's straight to work, or it's apprenticeship programs or military service and other things. And I still don't think we create an appropriate set of pathways, particularly the junior senior year. We're kind of building systems, we have been, for every student to do the same thing, and then we think they'll go different directions after high school. We need to back that up and allow them to take courses in high school that lead to their pathway earlier. So we got that legislation passed in our state, and when I first got into this job, we pushed hard for this. We do have multiple pathways, but it's taking us time to build it out. And here's part of why I want to make sure we spend a little time on it. Part of the reason is we don't control our own destiny in K-12. We could design incredible systems right now, but you've got these higher education partners who say, but these are the requirements we need every student to have to access us. And if you're a school system like the Stanwood school system, you're trying to figure out, well, how do I meet the needs of students but still actually pull this off? I can't have 50 different junior classes in economics or social studies with 5 kids in each one of them. They can't afford that. So they got to have classrooms where they can make the business model work. So they default to things that are traditionally what the universities want, very traditional academic things. And it's no disrespect to them. We need lots of baccalaureate degrees and higher, but it means we're competing over time and resources, and we're probably not building out everything we need for more students. So we've been working on what's called equivalencies. You take this awesome class that's more hands-on or real world, and it's got enough math in it that you get math credit, algebra, or it's got enough ELA credit, or it's got a science credit in it. We've got 50 courses now in the state where students can really begin to start to explore different pathways in their life and still get that core credit, so they don't feel like, oh, do I trade off that really technical hands-on skills class for the traditional academic one? We're trying to get you both in one. So long answer, I'm passionate about this. We need lots more of it.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like a process, but then at the same time, you can't fully go into one way or the other just because of like funding and stuff like that. You can't totally take that out, but then kind of combining them together to cover both bases. So it's not like necessarily a traditional, so yeah, I think I'm understanding.
Yeah. And remember, all I'm going to do is try to get as much resource for that in policy at the state level, and then each school district decides, well, what courses will we offer? Where are the certifications in our staff? Where do we have the talent and the skill to offer something? What are the jobs in our area calling for? So you're going to get very different answers in Stanwood than you do Spokane or Vancouver or Olympia.
Thank you. That's a really good answer. How is it ensured that teachers keep a distinct line between biased personal opinions and the curriculum that they are teaching?
Yeah, this is a really powerful question. Has been since the beginning of public education for sure. And I think in the last couple of years, a really heightened question because there's a lot of observation of the need to allow young people to really explore and see all sides of an issue. And I really have high faith in our high expectations in professional practice that is about information and perspective. So you can, for example, talk about them, and you should offer an example in the other direction so students hear balance, right? And not have a personal opinion added, but offering all of it. And then if somebody really thinks someone's out of bounds, there are processes. You take it to your building administration first, then your school district. There is office. Most it's conduct that's pretty severe. Say, hey, we've got students who don't feel like you're really creating the full breadth of consideration on issues. So keep it local.
That makes sense for sure. Thank you. So now these are some of the questions that we have from our traditional interviews. What is one piece of advice that you'd give to a high school student that has helped you out throughout life?
Okay, you ready? All roads lead to you. That's my advice. People think I've got to do X, Y, and Z because I really want to be an attorney, or I want to be in public office, or I want to own a business, or I want to do X, Y, and Z. There are so many ways to get there. And the journey is just as important as the end. So when I say all paths lead to you, don't be afraid to go work for a while or go do something in a field that you didn't think you necessarily want to. Go explore, be creative, imagine that you like three things and test them all out. Like you don't have to lock in and there's no one pathway. But when I say it all comes back to you, it will still boil down to you as an individual, your work ethic, right? And your own ethics and how you observe your contribution to the world. You can do that selling insurance. You can do that designing Boeing airplanes. But know who you are, and every route will get you where you want to go. But it will always come back to whether you bring something to the passion. Nothing gets handed to you. So all roads you pick are cool. They will all come back to you, and you'll have to look in the mirror every single day to know that you put your best game forward.
Wow, that's some great advice. Thank you very much. What exactly motivates you?
Achievement. I like results, so I'm very data driven, and that's really hard in human services businesses. Sometimes our evidence of our success is very delayed. It's 4 years, 5 years, 10 years later. So I'm very motivated by systems that can tell me whether we're on the right track. And then there's this faith you have to have in the incredible people doing good work. And then you kind of measure it from a distance generally. So I love solving problems, and I like to measure that we have solved them. And that is oftentimes my biggest challenge as well.
It makes total sense. This is like a follow-up question. How exactly does obtaining your job work? Is it kind of an election process, or is it you just get it and then you keep it throughout your life?
No, it's every 4 years. So everyone's familiar with voting for the president, every 4 years. Our state, just by virtue of when we became a state, our statewide offices, governor, lieutenant governor, insurance commissioner, my office, we all run every 4 years, and it's on the same calendar as the presidency. So anytime there's a presidential election, there is an OSPI election, and you run every 4 years.
Wow, that's really cool. And how many terms have you served so far?
I was just elected to my second term, so I just started that in January.
It's really cool. Congratulations. What exactly is your mission for Washington State Schools?
That we provide a safe place, I mean that physically and emotionally, for all students to explore who they are. Again, if they are creative and they think about the world in very dynamic ways with imagination, I want you all as students to feel like you can take a tech class or an academic class, you can explore the system and get to where you're still going and not feel like you're tracked too soon, one way or the other. And there's a lot of history about tracking students in vocational. I think there's a lot of history of tracking students in academic routes when what they really want is to be in a construction trades class or an automotive class, or I want to understand how electricity works, right? I want that electrical engineering course. So I want students to explore, use the system of basic education to know who they are, and then give you a post-secondary path that you choose: military, technical school, community college, university, straight to work, a gap year if you want to. I want every student to feel like the system worked hard for their success. And then at the end of the day, I want them to look in the mirror and say, I brought my best game. So the system spent $150,000 over 13 years in me. That's what the taxpayers fund each student. So did the student bring their best game? And when that happens, boy, do we get awesome results.
That's really cool. What is your favorite pie?
Apple, as long as it's heated up and it's got ice cream with it. Not by itself, got to have some vanilla ice cream.
Is there a specific brand you like? Is it like you get it from Costco or frozen, or you homemade it?
I am not sophisticated, so any good.
Very nice, very nice. And last question, have you visited our new Stanwood High School?
I have not. In fact, it's been a lot of years since I've been to Stanwood High School, but there was a couple trips when I was much younger. I was up there giving a speech or something a couple years ago, but have not been to the new high school. So it sounds like it needs to be on my next route up north.
For sure, we would love to definitely show you around. I've got to tour it a couple of times. It is beautiful, and we're very, very happy and very proud of it. It's very cool. Well, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day, especially because we know how busy you are, and it was very easy to make sure to get in contact with you, which was also very nice. And so that was really appreciated as well. So thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate all you do for Washington State and our school and stuff like that. And thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Charlotte. Good to see you. Go Stanwood. I'll get up there at some point. Be safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.